Hey everyone, it's Joe Lyons here, and I'm from Dallas, and I'm not a programmer, and I don't pretend to be one. I love to automate things and work faster and harder, or smarter, I should say, not harder. I've been using AutoHotkey for about 8 years now, and with my colleague here, Jackie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jackie, and I'm a system administrator from Copenhagen, Denmark, and I've been using AutoHotkey for maybe 5-6 years now, and been talking to Joe quite a lot of these years. And recently we have done quite a few things, actually, webinars, different topics, interviews, all kinds of AutoHotkey related stuff. And yeah, now we are also doing these random talks, maybe
Yeah,
you could call them. Yeah.
yeah. Today we're going to talk about basically, how do you decide when you should automate something, how and why, and the thought process. Initially, for me, it was, when you're new to it too, it's a steep learning curve. So for actually, you know what, an interesting thing, I've been reading all these books, and they're amazing books by these guys who they've basically made it big. Most of them are in direct marketing, or they're entrepreneurs, right? And they've created these great systems and stuff. And the biggest thing they have in common is they basically they didn't accept the world as it was. And they were like, man, I hate doing this thing over and over. And they didn't always, quote unquote, automate something, but they changed the process, and they found this new way to do it and became very successful. But it kind of it was hitting home with me, because I'm like, that's so much of how I got into using AutoHotkey. Was I just got so burned out with manually doing things, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And so I started automating things.
Yeah, exactly the same as me, actually. For a long time, with the education I have and stuff like that, where I actually drafted blueprints and stuff like that, it felt as if there was no other way than for me to actually do it. But at one point, I had a job switch, whatever you call that, and here I actually had way more data entry, and some of those tasks was, to me, mind-numbing, because it was kind of copy-pasting from one window to another, or from one program to another, stuff like that. And one day I was just like, there must be an easier way. I must be able to store multiple values at the same time, or something like that. So yeah, that's when I actually found this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, it's the same type of experience. Unless someone happened, you saw somebody do something and said, like, hey, how did you do that, right? Then you probably found AutoHotkey in a similar way, or whatever tool you use to find ways to save time. And so, but it's still, even when I started using it, it was like, I can't automate everything I do, right? Every little thing. So I had to start kind of outlining for what makes itself available. What are the easiest low-hanging fruits? And one example of what Jackie just said is like a lot of mouse clicks of copy paste, or switching between systems, things that you do. And that's part of the thing also, is it's that identifying a repetitive task. You'd think it would be super easy, but I think most of us, even I've been using AutoHotkey for seems like forever now, and I still realize there's other things that, like, I do this all the time. Why haven't I automated this part? Or logging into certain websites, or bookmarks, or whatever, right? There's so many things that we do, even when you've been doing it forever, but it's that identifying that pattern. And then there's the whole concept of, like, can I actually automate it, right? How will I go about automating it?
Yeah, and that's where it can get kind of hairy, because some people see automation as something very, very abstract, or very code intensive, or where some tools like AutoHotkey and of course other tools as well will allow you to interact almost as if you were a human. You need someone to sit down and see what are the steps that are needed. But as soon as you have those in place, or if you have maybe the experience of doing it before, or you have a keen eye for which steps is actually involved, then you will much quicker, or you will perhaps even over time see that almost anything feels as if it can be automated. And then it becomes a question of, should it be automated? What's the time frame? What's the cost of automating it?
Yeah. I'd add on to that, even a part of how much of that process should be automated, because sometimes I rarely automate everything from start to the finish without a human intervention, right? Even when I automate the vast process, I usually allow myself to review it before I hit publish or finish it. But generally speaking, still I don't automate the entire process. I just automate parts of it, especially the painful parts, right? And it's just so much easier.
I'd say I automate it very much in steps, where I take a small thing here, automate 3-4 clicks and a button or a copy or whatever it might be, and then I'll be happy with that and have that final result. And then that usually needs to go somewhere else. And then as soon as I manually have confirmed that it was correct, I'll probably automate the next step. But I will still keep that manual check there for a very long time, maybe longer than it needed to be, but I'll at least keep it there until I'm almost 100% sure that it's always giving me the result I expected. And when I then become convinced of that, then I might actually couple the two functionalities together.
Yeah, that sounds about how I do things as well. And I think part of that also is contingent on, especially if you're working at a place where they either don't know you're doing it or don't want you to automate it. There's a high level of risk where, what if something does happen, and I don't want to make that known. But when I'm doing stuff just for myself, I'm much more open to accepting the risk that something might go a little haywire, right? But generally speaking, I still like having a manual review real quickly. Just, it depends, of course, what the project is and what you're doing.
But of course, having that in there, depending on what it might be. Again, if it was something that I could confirm pretty quickly, visually or something like that, I'd be fine with having it there, or having it jump in, or making a log entry when it hit a specific point or what it might be. All of those things I feel like give stuff that is automated that that little extra, so it's not just all happening in the background. Because I've had scripts that made a mess. So of course that's also worth having and keeping in mind that. But I believe I saw or read somewhere that we can now, what was it? They had a time. Any task below 30 seconds can be automated. Anything a human can do in 30 seconds, we can automate.
I'll have to ask my wife, but I don't know if if that's going to work. But
I can remember if 30 seconds might be too long. It might be 5 seconds, whatever it is. Something that we can do very easily, we can automate now. And the thing with that article was that's fine. Okay, what can a human do in 30 seconds? The thing that becomes clear is that when you get used to seeing things in these 30-second intervals, it pretty quickly becomes clear to you that almost anything we do can be chopped into 30 things. So, I might be going over here and copying something, but the next thing I do is still something made up of small pieces of actions. And
the humans are so pathetic when it comes to keeping focus anyway, right? So it's you're absolutely right. I mean, that's usually, we don't do we think of it as one thing, but it's really a lot of different things we group together and break down internally. We do it, but yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I recently was at a seminar at work where they had a future, I don't know what they call it. I think we call it a future scientist, but I don't believe that's a word you would use. But it's someone who tries to anticipate where
A futurist.
futurist. Okay, something like that. And she, of course, had some things she said, and most of it was, sadly enough, some of it was already passé. But if you kind of keep track of this stuff, of course, someone who's paid or has a company that does the work and then goes out and tells everybody about it and tries to find a level where everybody can follow what the person is saying.
It's interesting because it's got to change, constantly change, right? And yet, you miss it. 6 months, and suddenly you're like, so everyone's someday going to have cell phones. And I know you don't believe this, but everyone's, and you're like, lady, that's already happened. Yeah.
And that was exactly what was happening. She had some different gamification she believed would happen, and the people around me who were kind of on the same level as myself was like, yeah, we have that there and there and there already. So that didn't really do anything for us. And then she had some weird concepts of everybody living in a house that would actually produce more energy than it used, so everybody would make money off of that. But that's just a misconception, because if everybody has a house that overproduces, who are they going to sell it to?
Right, but, that's right. Yeah.
So that was just some weird stuff she had there. But the idea of having tasks automated, she kind of touched on that, and I've thought about it myself in a long time. And people are kind of a little scared of automation. Is all the desktop jobs going away, or ain't they? And for quite a lot of years still, we'll have what is it called? Chris and the Chocolate Factory. That scenario where the dad is replaced by a robotic arm, and within a month he's rehired to actually repair the robotic arm. So we'll still have a lot of that, even though the pace of it has gone up, and we're getting more and more stuff that can be automated by automation systems. I'm still pretty sure that, as you said yourself, Joe, someone has to check that it actually also is what a human or the company or whatever it is needs for quite a long time.
It might mean that there were 10 people that did the job and now there's one, right? Because it's much more efficient, and one person can just review instead of doing all the work itself. But someone will be there, and I'd still say is like, look, there's that means other people need to keep improving themselves and either be that person or go find another skill to keep a job in something else. But again, let's get back into this of the whole thing about how do you decide what to automate. Why don't you scroll down a little on your, this is Jackie's website. He has an article here he published quite a while ago, but it was on this overall topic, and I remembered he had a thing kind of saying, doing a little bit of math, right, to help you think the first time you do something, often it'll take you probably, for some people, it'll take you about the same amount of time to program it as it does to actually do the work. And I know this thing says year down below, but just don't worry about it saying year. Let's just think about it as the first time you do it, right? Because for most of it's like I do something daily or weekly. But the first time you do it, it really won't, if you're new especially, you're probably not going to save any time. But the second time you do it, and Jackie and I were chatting about this, I think this graph is conservative in its savings. I think you'll save even more time the second time through. And actually what's interesting, like the second and third time and fourth time and fifth time, they're almost always going to be as the second one, right? It'll be a bigger saving, and it's unless you're like me and you're constantly tweaking your code to add little improvements to it, so it'll get optimized even more and you automate more of the process, you could save more time. But generally speaking, for mine, it's the first time through. The second time I use it, it's the improvements I see after that aren't huge.
No, and here with this graph that we're showing on screen right now is that it has the manual cost going up and up and up, but it isn't actually explaining anything about what's happening. Is it because more and more is being produced, or is it because the salaries are going up? Is it whatever it is?
Right. That's a great point.
For some reason, the automation is also going up in price or cost, which is, it feels a little weird.
Right.
But of course, if it's a car factory and it's actually producing more and more cars, of course, the cost will go up just because parts and stuff. But normally, I'd say the automation part, as soon as it's in place, let's say it's perfect, that would be amazing. But yeah, if it was, or if it actually did the task 100% or near to it, why would the cost of it go up? That's the thing with this graph, where I'm kind of like, here it's a little weird that the price of the automation would keep increasing. If at first it's automated, the price of that automation wouldn't actually increase unless it needed to process more data in the same time or something else. Well, and I'd even say, I agree with everything you're saying. The difference being with both of us is, I think you agree with me also, in the first time you do it, it might be pretty close to the manual cost, right? So that first one, okay, I can live with that. It's the second one where, you know what, that green bar should have been, and the second and third one should both probably be equal or close enough to equal, and they should both be a tenth probably of what the blue bar is. Yeah. If you instead did remove the year at the bottom and said, instead of saying time, you said times. The amount of times you did it. So for the first time you did it, the manual way of doing it and the automated way of doing it might be very close to each other in price. I've at least seen this, because it might take longer to automate it, but when the automation is in place, you will finish the rest of the work so quickly that you will quickly catch up to anyone doing it manually. So those two are quite hard to actually compare to each other. But when it, that's good. I'm on it, man. Yeah, you're on it. And the thing I mean is that if you look at the second time, the difference between the blue, the manual, and the green, the automated one, is significant. And for the third time, it again extends more. The difference becomes bigger. And that's more what I'd say I'd see normally. Not because the task would necessarily take more time manually the next time, but because you already have the automation in place. And the third time, because you believe, you trust in the automation might be the thing. That's right. Yeah. So this time you can cut it even more, because now you really believe it, because you had the first run, you had the second run, now you have the third run, and now you actually have a case where you have checked that the data it produces and all of that stuff is actually correct. So the third time, or the times after that. And you've built in some tests, some checks, right? Yeah, that's possible. So so this one would be less, right? And thereafter, maybe it's not the third, maybe it's the fifth or sixth, but still, in time it should actually drop. That's the thing. There we go. I'm going to publish this. Yeah. But I think that could be one scenario at least. Yeah. Where it would be like that. Now the other thing we were talking about a bit early before we started recording was
This is much more that first time period when you actually write the code. I think on average, this was my case about 3.5 to 4 years ago, when I didn't have a ton of a library of things that I've used in the past. So, and honestly, actually, for the very first one, I would have put the green bar up above the blue one, right? Because I knew nothing about automation, and it took me a lot of research and time just to understand what tool to use. I did a lot of investigation and trying stuff. That very first time I automated anything, it took me a lot longer. Then once I decided on AutoHotkey and started learning a little bit of stuff, then I would say this was me for the first year, let's say, where it would take me about the same amount of time. But now when I go to do something, I'm like, hey, I need to automate that. I start off usually way less than what it actually takes to do it.
Yeah. I believe that I got myself fired at one point for actually having the thing that when I look back at it now, is that at the time it seemed as if I was the golden egg for them, because I kept automating stuff and they just got better and better times of whatever task it was but someone didn't want to actually hire me. But still, the thing was that when I came to them and said, see, now I've automated this, I've saved those people so much time and this, that's great. And it felt as if in the back of their head there was this idea of, if he has time to automate it, he must, somewhere they were seeing
short-mindedness. That's stupid.
They were seeing some kind of flaw there. But again,
that was my experience, in corporate world too, with a couple of men. But one of them in particular, I said, hey, it was Friday at the end of the day, and I'm like, hey, when I go home this weekend, I'm going to automate, this thing, because I see it coming up a lot. And her response was not what I was expecting. And I hadn't put my finger on it, but I think that's probably what it was. Because I remember she said, like, do I need to give you more work? Because I think she thought I was goofing off or something. And at the time, I was so confused. I'm like, I'm offering to do stuff on the weekend, that's going to help us all, for free. And it was so weird. But yeah. Can you go to the other graph now?
Yeah.
Because that other one was one I also love.
So now you need to clean the screen.
Yeah, I'm working on it. There we go. Oh, clear all drawings. Yep. Yeah. So this is the other one, and this is still it's like a linear one snapshot, right? But it's that I do like the overall concept of, hey, let's compare time spent doing it manually and versus having a script do it. Yeah. And over time, the script way is going to far surpass what it takes to do it manually.
Yeah, and this graph, I feel that it's a great graph, because of course it's made by geeks, because hey, they win at the end, but still it still shows exactly how I felt. I was on that doing it manually line at the beginning, and then I discovered AutoHotkey and found out, hey, I can automate this. And at the beginning, I was lousy at it. And I made scripts that worked 80% of the time, 40, 50, whatever. They worked sometimes. And it was good because I saved at least some time on doing those really, really boring things. And the thing was that the task that had been boring and mind-numbing had now become kind of, as I said earlier, a gamification on that task, because now for me it happened to be about automating the task. So it might be all of this data that had to be moved, but I didn't really care about the data. It had to be moved. Okay, who wants to actually sit and move data? But to automate the process of moving the data, that now became an intriguing task for me, because I had that step of actually automating it. And when I finally got it automated, I was like, yay, I automated it. And at the time, I might not have kept a close eye on when I could have gotten it finished manually compared to when I actually had it finished by automating it. But at least I had that freedom without my boss's consent. But at least I had enough freedom under, I don't know, freedom with responsibility or whatever you say.
Someone wasn't sitting over your shoulder watching you actually work.
No, the thing was, they expected me to get the work done, and I got the work done, and I did it in a time frame that wasn't totally out there. But it might not have worked if there had been a really, really sharp deadline. Not when at that time, because I would have had no idea of when the automation would have been done.
Right. Well, and you didn't have a library to draw from. Everything took more time, and you said it's less reliable. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing now where you have done it so many times, you have pre-written code. You know where to look up other ones that have done it before you, and you have kind of an inkling beforehand of how involved will this process be. Even if you haven't seen all of the steps of it, just by someone explaining it in a few words or a few sentences, you will still have an idea. You very quickly make kind of a mental map of some of the steps that you need to go through. And
because actually I have a meeting, I think it's not booked yet, but planned meeting next week with a large company where they wanted to start automating stuff. And I was initially planning to be home, but when I realized it's different things I haven't worked on yet, I'm like, well, all right, I'll come in, because apparently my colleague was saying they're going to want some sort of a price of like, hey, can you tell us how much this is going to cost? And so my first thought was like, well, I actually got to be there and do a couple things on that computer in the program to understand, is there COM available? Will it take control clicks, right? There's a couple things right away you can test and go, oh, this is going to really, be a major pain in the booty, versus, oh man, it's going to be easy. Like if I see I can access it versus with IE 9 out of 10 times, right? And there's no frames, even with frames, it can do it. But without frames, like I can crank through stuff, quickly.
Yeah. Or if you come over there and see it's a Delphi program they've custom made at one point,
right?
Like
Flash,
I don't really know how to.
Well, we could. It shifts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because then maybe you'd find an image, part of the thing and click it. Depends what you're doing, right? But
that's what I mean. If you get to something and you immediately load that your normal go-to things will not work in this case, and you have to kind of go over here with some of those that you have used in a few cases, but you still need to either go educate yourself about it or look what has others done.
Yeah.
But when it is within your normal comfort zone, you can pretty quickly say, this is an easy automation, or this is a hard one. Yeah.
The other thing I'd say, actually, before I get there, is what I was going to say was, when you were talking about you were doing something, gamifying it, making it fun for you, right? What you weren't realizing at the time, I'm guessing, is you weren't as talking about you're building up your skill set in this, right? You're actually, if you had just manually done the work, you've added almost nothing to your ability to help that company to make more money, right? You're just working by the hour. And when you're doing it this way, you start developing yourself, and either you help them be more productive or you're more hireable in another company or whatever, right? But it's an investment, that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it from both sides, because I'm still in a job where I'm allowed that time to do stuff like this, because they see it as both adding value to me, but also the stuff that I produce is for them. So of course they get the value out of that.
Yeah.
But again, they would also gladly send me off for learning a course of something or doing something over here. Yeah. But by having me actually do work while I learn,
right. And how awesome is that?
Kind of a win-win for them. So
absolutely, yeah.
For me and for them. So
that's right. Yeah.
So the only place where they can't do it with this because you don't really have it, but that would be if they could send me off to something that was way more intensive, and they would know that I would come back with a specific skill set. But Windows automation, that's not really easy to send people off to. No. Yeah.
The other thing I'd say, which we already discussed, but it's adding, you're slowly over time adding tools to your library that you can repurpose later, right? Yeah. And that's that's another big argument for this. Even though this is a one-time, it looks in this example, it's a one-time task, the odds are pretty darn good at some point you're going to borrow what you wrote, and one is you learn it, but two is you just have the code, and then now you have that little nugget that you can repurpose later on. And so that initial bar and that other graph wouldn't be nearly as much. That's why I was saying the first year it was more like that. But after the first year, I had quite a library of stuff. The other critical thing, which is what you mentioned to some degree too, but is when I take on something, I search my code to see if I've done anything close to it, because I forget stuff I've done, right? So I'll go there, and then I'll search the forum in Stack Overflow. And then if I can't quickly find something there, I have resources like you, Jackie, like John and Maestrieth and a couple other people that work in different areas, and I'll ping them and say, hey, have you done anything with this stuff? And if one of them has, usually they'll share with me something, and I might even ask, depending how complex it is, for a 15 to 30 minute overview, right, of the concept to kind of step me in, explain some of the things you got to look out for, right? Because it's like, man, knowing someone that can help you with that, and of course it works both ways, is not that I ever helped Jackie, but we'll bounce ideas around, but he's so much better at programming than I am. It's ridiculous. But it really is a great way to be faster at it. And so that's what I encourage you guys is so many people, and I know, Jackie, you did some stats in this before, so many people on the forums are lurkers, right? They'll go there and they read. But like for me, the first, I'd say over 2 years, I never posted one thing, right? I just kept reading. And then I finally broke down and I'm trying to remember, because actually I had a problem to solve the other day, and I Googled it I use Google to search the forum. And it was so funny because when I found the solution I was looking for, it was one of those that you had helped me with. I'm like, yeah, that was another one of those things. Like, you kept answering my questions. And that was how we actually started talking. But
I'd say that AutoHotkey, a great tool as it is, it of course has whatever kinds of faults any language might have, but it feels as if the years under its belt and the willingness of all of the people coming together and having maybe only a single place, 2-3 places that people can actually share their code, because the size of the community and stuff like that actually makes it easy.
Better. Yeah, it's a club too.
To find. So you don't need to make those very, very broad searches or go looking over here and under that rock and kind of that. You almost always get a pretty good result on Google if it's something that people have done before without AutoHotkey, of course. And again, AutoHotkey being something that automates Windows, so a lot of that stuff is what's been focused on. So when you get into more obscure coding concepts, you might not find as many examples, but still for the automation tasks, which AutoHotkey really excels at, you can find so many good examples. So many functions, so many definitions, and in recent times, objects or classes that actually help you do the tasks.
The critical thing, and this is one of those things I've been reading all those books I was talking about. In the books, they talk about, everyone says, hey, it's not my business, that won't work here. Well, in our case, just because someone didn't post an exact solution exactly matching what you needed, don't realize, like, hey, I need to do a little work on my own to adapt this to my need, right? It can be, if it's the same, let's say it was something in Excel, you find something in Excel that someone was doing some work in, you can probably tweak it. It's don't get caught up like, well, it pasted from this cell and I wanted, B22 and that's B25, right? I mean, it's a simple example, but it's stupid. But some people get really like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. You know what? I mean, this is, take a little bit of work on yourself and tweak it and adapt it.
And AutoHotkey is already a grouping of stuff that makes it easier for you to switch windows or to click on specific spots and stuff. So you don't have to automate it in C++ or whatever it might be. So you have some very, very nice commands and functions available to you that makes those tasks easy enough for you to make a function or a command that makes another more involved step easier for you. That might be copy pasting. You might have the need to, let's say, do the same thing as you would do. You would select some text. You would either do it by the keyboard or by the mouse, or you would do it visually. All of those commands are available to AutoHotkey. So you would make a very small function, maybe 8 lines or something like that, that would go in, empty the clipboard, send the copying command to the window, make sure that the clipboard now holds some specific data, either any data or something specific, and then you would store that in a variable or whatever, and restore what was in the clipboard originally. This would allow you to copy anything without actually interfering with your normal work. So you could have one key, copy what you have selected right now, but still keep what you selected prior, or the image, or whatever it might be. So now you can store how many things you want within a single function of maybe 8 lines of code. And that, to me, when you're talking about automation or being more productive, having that available to you globally, something that small that you could use in almost any case. That's where automation really, really begins.
One that comes to mind with almost exactly what you just laid out is my, if I hit Control V, of course, it'll paste what's in my clipboard. But if I hit Control G, it'll paste plain text of my clipboard. Right. But I can go back and hit Control V, and it still has the actual stuff in the clipboard because I designed it exactly how you just laid out. And it's a simple one of like, I use that like how many times a day do I just want the text of my thing but stripped out of all the formatting.
And instead of people going to search, typing in Node or whatever part of Notepad they want to search for, to open a Notepad, paste it in there, recopying it out, and then putting it where they want it because they don't want Word to maybe underscore it or whatever. Was.
Or the font size or color or the hyperlink. There's so many things.
Exactly. And very, very small things like that. And one of the things I've loved recently is to actually use OCR. Yeah.
I've been using what you gave, us during that webinar. I love it. It's been great.
If I look at this image on screen right now and I wanted to rewrite makes fun of Geek's complicated method, the thing that's almost in the middle of the image. Instead of me typing that, I don't like typing. That's just me. I would immediately click on the hotkey to do the same thing as you just described, Joe, and encase that text and get it in plain text in a box or in the clipboard or whatever. This makes it very, very easy for me to get snippets of text from anything without actually thinking about what it might be. And instead of me retyping something, making typos, whatever, I might need to recheck, just read the text that the OCR captured for me.
But it's
just, I find it really, really like something I wouldn't have expected I would use, but something that I really, really often do use. Let's say it's a 28 character code I need to enter from an image to somewhere else. I've seen that a lot, and it's just it's nice to be able to automate the process of grabbing those instead of actually sitting there and retyping something you see on site.
I had a call with Jesus. He's on our webinars a lot, right? So I had an interview with him, I think last week, and he does translations. And so he built an AutoHotkey script where I didn't realize this, but I think it's French, and he mentioned a couple other, and actually there's two different versions. The quotes, the double quotes that we use are different in English versus French versus this other language. I forget what it was. And he could just, hit his hotkey, and then when he hits a double quote, it puts in what they use. And so he was very quickly swapping out, without having to do anything crazy. And I'm like, I love it. It was just a quick, easy way to swap out what your computer uses for that same keystroke. That's the beauty of it, right? But I think the thing is, like, no matter how small it is, it's more, to me, it's more about the frequency, how often I do it, that really drives me, because it's something I do a lot. I'm gonna do my best to automate that. The bigger ones, of course, like actually I've done really big things. For our email marketing, I automated this thing that used to take my colleague over 40 hours of manual work, and I automated the entire process where it took my computer like 5 minutes to run in the background, and it actually delivered far more than what he did, and yet it was in the background. I could keep working on my computer while it was kicking away. Now that took me weeks, probably at least 3 weeks, I'd say, at least, to program. But once I did it, I now could do our email metrics at any time, any place in 5 minutes, and we used it for like a year. I mean, it saved an amazing amount of time in the long run. And I also really added to my Excel library, because it was all in Excel. I added a lot of functions to my Excel library that I now keep repurposing, right? So again, that's what I want to hammer home with people is, the first time you step in AutoHotkey, that first learning curve, it's steep. But you know what? Remember, think of it as an investment in yourself, right? I think that's a critical part of this, is you're investing in yourself and your time and your energy, and that you're going to build this, build knowledge in this library of code, and the overall process. Because as Jackie mentioned, he was outlining that process of your clipboard, this and that, and I was going to say, hey, I can, add to that of like, there's probably like 5 different ways with AutoHotkey that, depending on where you're trying to get the text, right, I might change it, right, or where you're going to paste it. Is hey, if it was on a website and you're always getting this text, that's one of the things I did, is I'd always have to go here and get the name of the email campaign, and it was always in the same spot. So I automated actually, going to the page and grabbing, because it was always in the same spot, and so I didn't have to go highlight it and do anything. It automatically loaded the page for me and grabbed it. And it was like, okay, that's so much easier. But we have a great webinar. That's why I wanted to bring it up, and I'll try to find it. I'll put it in the notes to this thing. We had 2 on it. One was, various ways to connect with programs, and then the second one was like a real world trying of the different ways to connect to programs. Yeah. So for examples of them.
Yeah, and I'd say with this one, where we're trying to talk about what to automate or why automate, is that, of course, you can see it in many ways, and both you and me, Joe, are seeing it like the one who actually learned AutoHotkey and how to automate. And for a company, it might look completely different. But for me, I'm talking mostly to the actual person who has already found AutoHotkey or has an interest in that. Yep. And whatever task you have that needs to be automated, don't sweat it. Just do it. Do the small stuff. Do it many times. Help someone else do small stuff, because at some point you'll be able to make it bigger or connect more of the dots, and at some level somewhere you'll either be able to completely automate a full task or automate something that you have either found very boring or that really pays off.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'll second that. And that Jackie and I, we've been doing our webinars over 2 years now. So every month we have another webinar, and we've talked over the years to a lot of different people. I think I've been doing one-off interviews with people, and I interviewed like 19 different people, I think now, or somewhere in there. And everyone I've ever talked to has agreed with exactly what Jackie said, was like, you know what, it's an investment in the long run. It's worth it. right? And so if you are on the front end side of this, trust in yourself, invest in yourself, it'll pay out, right? And those of you who have already been doing this, right? It's just a matter of like, how do I have time to learn more and get lucky enough to be like where Jackie is, where you don't have to hide it, right? Which is crazy to me. Why do I have to hide that I'm automating stuff for my boss? Where they will actually pay you and even reward you, right? And have job security, and even like he said, they'll pay you to go learn other stuff, right? I mean, this is awesome.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I really hope that people keep with it. That's the best I can really say. I had no plan when I started learning this or what I needed to automate. I simply had a need to get a job done, and I thought, hey, there must be an easier way, and I found out that it could be automated. And for me, it was kind of an epiphany. And we know that the world around us is trying to automate whatever they can, because companies, they of course have seen that it pays off for them. But at the moment, the next many years, it's a good skill to get, however way you see it. Yeah.
For me, the first 3 years, I used AutoHotkey for doing hot strings and hotkeys to launch things. And then I left my job, and then I came back to a different job. I got interviewed for a job that was apparently the people would burn out every like year and a half because it was just so mundane and crushing and boring. And so I went in and I was supposed to be using SQL and doing this stuff. I'm like, I don't know anything about SQL, but thankfully my previous boss in the job had told my new to-be boss that, hey, if someone can automate it, it's Joe. And so I said, look, I don't know jack about SQL, but I do know how to automate things. And I said, I will, I'll take it on. And thankfully they hired me, but it took me a while to get the object-oriented stuff and web scraping and using GUIs. But man, the stuff I still built there was just it was awesome. And now I of course had that skill set, and I left, and I'm doing my own thing. So
exactly.
All right. Well, unless you got anything else to add here, I think we're good.
Yeah. I think that's a good talk.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys or hear from you guys. We're trying to figure out how much we'll have with video and audio, but we'll see or hear from you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye.